You boys know what's about to happen to you. You leave now.
Some consider these traits to be toxic, such as undesirable in the men of today. We consider these traits such as these not only to be desirable, but to be appreciated and celebrated. Welcome to the Toxic Male Appreciation Show, hosted by and La Reina Creole. Welcome to the safe space for the toxic male.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Reina, the Reina Creole, and of course, with me is the amazing her of positive fandom. And this, of course, is the Toxic Male Appreciation Show, where we appreciate those traits that Hollywood mistakenly or misguidedly or just ignorantly likes to deem as toxic. So we don't demonize that on this show. Oh no. We appreciate that. And not only do we appreciate it, we also point out when certain narratives are starting to be played in Hollywood. Oh yeah, we jump on those. And boy, do we have a doozy for you today. So how you doing, my dear?
I'm doing well. I'm hoping that since we're well into March now, that it will start to feel more like spring because I'm done with this 30-degree, 40-degree weather. I want it to warm up a bit. But other than that, I can't complain. How are you?
I'm doing okay. There's like the pollen is doing a happy dance here, and my nose is particularly like it. It's like going outside. It's not safe. Stay inside with the air conditioning and the allergy pills, and it's gonna be great. But other than that, quite well. I see you, DK Geek says DK
Hi.
Greek. Sorry, says Hail Lorena and Positive Fandom. Can't
Hey.
say but wanted to stop by and say hi. Was certainly glad that you stopped by and said hi. Thank you for subscribing to me over on Twitch. So please do make sure you subscribe to her a Positive Fandom and myself on Twitch as well as YouTube. So we're just going to go ahead and kick this off because there was a headline that grabbed my attention this week, and considering what we've been seeing in the press of late with the company behind the subject of this movie, this doesn't do the film any favors. So from CBR.com, who I really don't usually like to use CBR, but in this case, it's interesting. The Dungeons and Dragons movie intentionally emasculates its leading men. Now, for those of you who are our normies about Dungeons and Dragons or normies and aren't even aware of just the circus of crazy that has been going on in the tabletop industry. Dungeons and Dragons isn't doing themselves, or I should say, Hasbro that owns it isn't doing themselves any favors. Do you want to kind of give people like the Cliff Notes? Cliff Notes. Wow, I'm aging myself. Reader's Digest Cliff Notes version of just what's going on with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, unfortunately, they started off the year quite a rocky patch because for the longest time, there was this open gaming license that allowed creators to create additional adventures. And still use the Dungeons and Dragons rules and gameplay. And whole industries have been built around this gameplay, that we're all familiar with, who are role playing gamers out there. And it's just the amount of people that you mentioned, Critical Role, Lorena. There's a bunch of companies that everybody knows who have developed so much of their brand around Dungeons and Dragons gameplay, only to find out through a leak. And the leak, of course, ended up being the truth. So it was a document that was released that let everyone know that Dungeons and Dragons, owned by Hasbro, wanted to revoke that open gaming license and essentially make people who or companies who are using the rules be part of Hasbro, but they have to forfeit some of their earnings to Hasbro. And of course, this goes against the open gaming license. And, it was just absolute mayhem and panic. And I've never seen anything like it, Lorena. And the open gaming license and everybody who depends on this type of role playing games and industry were shaken by this. And what, interestingly enough, unfortunately, even after Hasbro tried to do damage control and very poorly, a
Hmm.
very poor effort, I might add, it doesn't seem to, excuse me, it doesn't seem to matter because what's happened is that this open gaming license, even though it's been restated or an option for different creators, no one wants to touch Dungeons and Dragons now. Their particular rules with a 10-foot pole for a company that pretty much gave no warning, offered no real benefit for a lot of these brands, and
Hmm.
they're going off and creating their own rules to do their own role playing games, and inevitably this has ended up with a lot of these not normies but hardcore fans wanting to boycott the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Lorena, the people who would have bought tickets to this movie, the movie that we've been waiting for quite some time, now has this kind of hanging over it. And now hearing this information makes it even less tasteful.
Absolutely. Now, I am not a tabletop gamer. I'm aware of Dungeons and Dragons. Haven't really gotten into it. I love the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. Loved watching that. But when I read this and sentence underneath, the Dungeons and Dragons movies writing team reveal they intentionally emasculated the leading men in the film and put the women on the front lines. Now, when I read this line here, I had a flashback to something that I saw, and I almost want to say, and this was years ago, and I almost want to say that was the point in time where I got the epiphany of they really are seriously pushing this quote unquote girl power thing rather than it being all of the characters. And what I'm talking about, you've seen Endgame, right?
Yes.
When this scene came on in the theater, you could hear the collective what what is this? Because it wasn't like an Infinity War where everybody was fighting. I mean, female characters and male characters, they were just switching from one to the other to several to that. There was all cohesive that was going on. All you saw were the Avengers versus Thanos' minions. That's all that you saw. That's all that you really cared about to see. So the rematch, as I like to call it here, in Endgame, it's like all of a sudden the combat came to a halt. And why? So they could put this moment in there. And it was one of the most jarring moments where I just said, You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it was absolutely forced. There was nothing natural about this moment. It felt very out of place, out of sorts. It almost looks like they're all going back to craft services for a cup of coffee. It doesn't feel very powerful. It almost feels like, okay, we're taking a break, and everybody's kind of walking off to the side. It certainly doesn't have the same gravity that in The Mandalorian season 2, when Bo-Katan and Cara Dune and I think Casca Reeves and a bunch of other women who were there walking inside of Moff Gideon's ship, walking together, kind of storming the it's not a cockpit, but it's a bridge.
Hmm.
Certainly didn't have the same level of intensity in this particular scene that we're looking at, couldn't even match what they did in that season with Star Wars. So I think it's very interesting that it has to be a natural flow. You can't force these things. This was forced. This was 100% inserted in there. It was done to make a point. It didn't make a point. It just looks ridiculous. As I said, I don't know if they were like, oh, free smoothies, guys, free smoothies. Oh, free smoothies. Let's go get some smoothies. It looks like that's what everybody's heading over, over to, or tea or water or whatever it is. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't make any sense to even have this in there. They could have done this in so many different ways. It didn't have to be where we're all going to stand together and take a photo together. All the women, come on, all the women, come on. Yeah, I know this battle. Come on, come on, we're all going to take a photo. This is so staged, and it's the most ridiculous part of the film.
It absolutely is. And I remember all of the pushback. Like, I was pissed off about it. But there were several people, I mean, a lot of people who were to, the producer saying, oh, they basically admit it got changed over quote unquote pandering concerns. And what that means, okay, so number one, with that particular scene, supposedly it was put in there because I think, was it the niece of one of the producers? So actually, apparently, writer Craig Kyle, I guess, who wrote the film, basically got inspiration from this picture. And one of the female producers were like, "Oh, I want this female moment to empower my niece, so I want to put it on the screen." And apparently, yes, that's what she wanted. That's what she wanted to put in. And they heard, it's like this might be concerned to seeing as pandering. So the resulting scene that we got, scary as it is pared down from what this person wanted. So rather than have a film and a scene that supports all the characters, that is natural and fits in with the flow of things, you want to make a quote unquote statement in this movie. I mean, people have their personal reasons for their craft and everything, but it totally came off as pandering. It wasn't, if you're going to do something like that and you have these female superheroes, why not go back to the same synergy that was from the first movie and bring it in there? Not have this, hey, everything grinds to a halt so we can have all of the female Avengers do, the Ocean's 11 stroll, you know?
Yeah, and it feels very unnatural. It feels very forced. It's complete insertion. It doesn't belong there. It's not joyous. It doesn't. It's like a completely different film. Like, it doesn't belong there, and it's so disappointing to see that they couldn't pull it off the right way. They could have been a bit more creative and just have everybody stand there and somebody pan a camera across in front of them. Like, I'm like, this is really lazy and cheap, and it doesn't feel very empowering at all.
No, it really doesn't. And I think that was literally the point in time where I said, you know what, I don't like this. And it's such an obvious, obvious, obvious thing that they're doing to masculate men in movies. And it's just like, for what reason? It just totally doesn't make sense. But we're going to keep on using Dungeons and Dragons as the poster kid for this, because this intentionally came out. So this is giant freaking robot Chris Pine's new movie is intentionally designed to emasculate men. Chris Pine's Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves character is purposely not a fighter, as the movie writers love flipping the generic Hollywood script. Now, we've heard the term, I'm a lover, not a fighter, but usually when a male character said that, they were more cerebral,
And
but
in a
not any
Casanova.
less masculine. Exactly. 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 It's just like masculinity, but in a different form. And we know that that's what we expect to see. We know the trope. We're just like, okay, we're ready to see that. But in the case of this movie, they're not doing it to show a different dimension of masculinity. They are doing it to basically make a mockery of masculinity.
I mean, I really wanted to see this, the incredibly sexy Chris Pine fight and talk the panties off of every woman in this movie and just like enjoy it. And, maybe he even would have gone full frontal there. I said it, but he has like, shown that. So I was kind of expecting to see a little bit more of Chris Pine, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Is really disappointing. I want to see him kick ass, but I also want to see him use that Chris Pine charm to the fullest, as you would expect someone like him would have to. As a thief, he has to be charming. He has to, make women
Yes.
comfortable, chat them up. Put on, the smiles, all of that good stuff, and potentially bed some of these women. Like that's what should be happening, but he still has to be able to kick ass and jump out a window if he has to, and all that fun stuff. So this is really disappointing. I don't like what they're doing. He should be so macho and bravado and full of himself that it's like so much masculinity, you just can't stand it. That's what this character should be like. This should have been a role that Chris Pine would have shined in, and people would have been like, I can't stand that man, but I want his number.
Exactly. I know he's bad for me, but I just can't stay away.
Yes.
Can't stay away. But the more we read into this article, the more you folks will start to understand. Of course, there's lots of you out there who already know, but this is just so in your face. So just exactly how Giant Freaking Robot likes to write their articles. After getting what was coming to him in Olivia Wilde's incel-driven twist drama, Don't Worry, Darling. I skipped that.
Mm-hmm.
I just had no. I said I'll just go back and watch the Stepford Wives, frankly, because that's the vibe that I got from watching it. I'm like, well, I can go back and watch the Stepford Wives. Did it much better
Yes, agreed.
and creepier. That there's a reason the Stepford Wives is classic and is a pop culture trope. So Chris Pine will let the ladies take charge again in his upcoming action fantasy feature Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. In an interview with Variety, the co-writers and directors, actually they're both men, said that while they admittedly love emasculating leading men, their drive for the film's storyline was in no way based on quote unquote wokeness. If you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you.
Why have him in it at all? Just make it a female group, and that would have been a little bit easier to handle, versus making an example of one person who's incredibly sexy. Like, you take a sexy man and you do this to him. Why would you do that, knowing how hot he is?
Mhm.
We don't want to see him emasculated. We want to see him, in his glory. So this is really ridiculous. He doesn't need to be emasculated at all, and it's not natural to have a thief can't be emasculated.
No, no. The thieves, either if a thief is a man, it's usually he's aggressively masculine. If thief is a woman, she's incredibly sexy and uses her femininity as a weapon. One of the most famous female thieves ever, Catwoman.
Hmm. Yes, in the cat suit, strutting her stuff, but also kind of like doing incredible, sexy acrobatics and
Hmm.
still kicking butt, but kind of riding off in a motorcycle skin tight outfit, shiny, the
Exactly.
works.
Yeah.
So absolutely, Lorraine, you're right about that. And it plays up on the sexuality of male and female gaze. Honestly, this guy should be just completely irresistible, but also men should say things like, "Damn, I wish I was like that too." You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm. Exactly. And especially when you're talking about a fantasy role playing, well, fantasy tabletop game, but you're making the movie based on, that type of atmosphere. So to read on, okay, apparently they wrote Horrible Bosses, which I never saw, Game Night, which I never saw, Spider-Man Homecoming, which I never saw, but that has what I call Tony Stark Jr. I do not like that Spider-Man.
where he's pandering to Tony Stark and he's constantly like, "Mr. Stark, Mr.
This
Stark."
Stark,
It's like,
this Stark, this Stark.
come on, kid. Don't you know what ghosting is?
I know. I just like I said, whoever thought of that, just thank goodness for Spider-Man No Way Home. I mean,
Yes.
that was perfect, but I did not, again, sick and tired of Tony Stark Jr. But apparently they said they wrote Michelle Rodriguez as Holga the Barbarian and Sophia Lillis, Doric the Druid, to be the leading fighters because of how it shaped the rest of the ensemble. So apparently they said we'd like that Holga is the bruiser that does the dirty work for Edgin, which is, I guess, Chris Pine's character. Daly said, adding that Chris Pine's Edgin the Bard doesn't like to get his hands dirty. So apparently they talk about in their past projects using the female use of brute force as funny and fresh. And deviating from the typical male leads, the writing team preferred they had to have their male heroes challenged and not simply heroic.
Yeah, that's weird. And we know that that's not the natural order of things. And, this is not, these young women are not Wonder Woman. They're not. So, and I'm guessing many of them probably weigh about 100 pounds. This is not, it's not
Mhm.
possible for them to be doing fights like what we're seeing. And a lot of times I've had to turn off some things where I'm like, that woman weighs about 78 pounds. This is not happening. And it is different if you're a skilled martial artist like Michelle Yeoh,
Mhm.
maybe maybe I could give it a pass where I know that that woman can fight and is a martial artist master. But if you're not in that category and you're somewhat petite, which many of these actresses are really small, it's just the
Yes.
truth. Many of them are really tiny, and you see them in person, you're like, wow, she's really small. It's just not realistic to think that they are going to be using brute force. Yeah, there is no brute force. It just doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist unless you have an equalizer, for the reason why, if you've ever seen, when you see movies that have, like a female cop, their equalizer is their firearm that they
Yes.
have. And they are most likely to draw it much quicker than, like, say, a male cop who outweighs them by 50 pounds that is taller than them by like 3 or 4, 5 inches or whatever. There's that equalizer. Wonder Woman has superpowers. She has her
Mhm.
lasso of truth. Linda Hamilton in Terminator. How many guns have we seen her pull out? You
And she
know,
can take punches too. Like, she's taken some punches.
yes, absolutely. There has to be some kind of equalizer of force when you've got a woman in a combat situation, whether she's a martial artist and she's more nimble, because we've seen that setup, but we've seen that setup before, especially if you play Mortal Kombat. You know exactly what's going on. But it seems like with this movie, yet again, and the writers are blunt and upfront with it, that they're basically making the men the butt of the joke. And we're actually going to look at the trailer, so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. But to add a little bit more, course, they're like, oh, this will rub some viewers the wrong way with the woke culture already being thrown around when the film's title is brought up in conversation. That's because it's analogous. We've seen this happen before. It keeps happening. And these writers actually say, unlike the other men they've worked with, they said that Chris Pine was more than happy to stand down from an alpha male role, allowing the writers and directors to make him look as bad as possible throughout the film.
That's interesting, and certainly Chris Pine is entitled to do whatever he likes, and so none of us care if that's his intention, because it's his choice. But when it comes to what we want to see on film, that's our choice. And we don't really like to see stuff like that. Nobody does. There's nobody applauding that. I wanted to see Chris Pine, kind of canoodling with a woman, getting a knock on the door, opening the door with a crack. There's another woman who wants to canoodle with him. He's like, give me 5 minutes, closes the door, finishes where it goes outside, grabs her purse, like all sorts of stuff. I wanted to see all this kind of crazy things that he could do, because he is a skilled thief and he has talents that we should have been amazed by what this man is doing. And it should be stuff that's so amazing that even the people in his group are shocked by what he's doing. And he can get them out of situations, maybe not even having to lift a finger sometimes, but if he has to, he can throw a punch. That's what I wanted to see in this character. I wanted to see him, kind of show his force. I think Chris Pine could probably kick some serious ass too. So, there's certainly, he was in The Contractor. We know he can play that kind of a role. Certainly we could see that type of thing going on. And I could see him rescuing somebody, but then holding them ransom for money. So I think he can be a very clever, you released me. Yeah, I released you, but I still got to have my payday.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't get the idea of trying to make men the butt of the joke, because I don't know if you've ever seen Robin Hood Men in Tights. I freaking love that movie. Oh my gosh, I love that movie. It was a humorous take, and of course you had your boneheads that were in that, but the men weren't like insulted through that. It was like all in very very good humor. But Carrie Elwes is like, he was never like emasculated in his role, or had to worry about Maid Marian saving the day and stuff like that. That didn't happen. So it's really just, it's really a shame that they're doing this. And I will show you the trailer, because when I saw the trailer, I was like, we doing this again? We're doing this again?
Of course, my fantasy in my mind is playing out here. Here's Chris Pine looking all hot. I could see him like fighting somebody in the nude. Like, this is how far I would have taken this shit. Like he would have been like, and it would have been like, you don't have any clothes. He doesn't have any clothes. And he's like, that's never stopped me before. Like,
here I go. Like, yes, this is my bravado.
Knock out the bully, grab the coin purse.
Exactly.
Get in the carriage, whatever it is.
That's what we expect to see, because not only do we have Chris Pine, but we have Ray John Page from Bridgerton in this. So we'll run the trailer and let you guys
Here's the thing. We're a team of thieves. And when you do this, you're bound to make enemies. Sometimes those enemies come looking for revenge.
So far, it's like, okay.
Truth be told, we helped the wrong person steal the wrong thing. We didn't mean to unleash the greatest evil the world has ever known. But we're gonna fix it.
So how do we pull that off?
I mean, they're wearing masculine clothing.
You need To give us a fighting chance, we're gonna need strength. You got
And if
this,
she
right?
was going
No,
to
you
wear
don't.
something like that, it could have been a bikini top style thing, you know.
We also need courage, magic, and you. What is that again? Owlback. Be warned. There is evil here.
I'm glad he's on our side.
And this song does not match what the tone of this is at all.
Whatever happens.
Thank you.
Since when is that Dungeons and Dragons-ish? Like that, this music is not appropriate for this. Like it's weird. And you know, honestly,
I'm a planner. I make plans.
You've already made the plan, so
If the existing plan fails, I make a new plan.
you make plans that fail.
No,
He also plays the lute.
not relevant.
now seeing him at the end gave me a chuckle. But you know, he really should be, you know, kind of like romancing up these chicks too, trying to get in their pants, even though they're still on the same team. It's like, I knew I'd get to you. I knew you'd like me after this. I knew,
Right.
you know, like it should be like that without her kind of like questioning him with that bullshit. Cause it's kind of like he's doing a hell of a lot more than you are if he's planning all this stuff out. Leave him be, let him do what he has to do. She's an okay character, turning into her creatures and all that fun stuff. But and if he doesn't pick up a sword, and if that other guy doesn't pick up a sword and start doing some hardcore Dungeons and Dragons stuff, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. Like those characters, you would be rolling and they would be doing hits. I mean, that's the whole point of it all.
Exactly, because I mean, when I think of Dungeons and Dragons, I'm thinking fire, spells, battles. There's always something going on. What do you do? This choice, that choice, you know. And the music I feel should match, you know, as the same. It feels like they're trying to make it into, you know, into a rock opera. And with myself as a normie watching this, I'm just like, I'm a complete normie. And I'm just like, this just doesn't seem to match up.
It doesn't. I don't who did the obviously that's
Let's
Led
take
Zeppelin,
a
but is
find
any
out.
music composed for this? Because I think somebody like Thomas Newman could have, not that they probably would have been able to get him, but
Mhm.
I think Thomas Newman might have been great in this.
Let's see, all cast and crew. Let's see, that's cast. Music by Lauren. I've never heard of this person before. Let me find out.
Hey,
Let's
Lauren.
see. That's Lauren. Lauren in Inverness, Scotland.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. He's done Black Adam, End of the World, Ticket to Paradise, His Dark Materials.
He even
Luther
did the new Luther.
Yeah.
He did the music for Wheel of Time, so he knows how to do that kind of music. The Wheel of Time music wasn't bad. Dope Sick was a great show. He knows what he's doing. It's just that Whole Lot of Love is not selling it to anybody. Like, what is it? It's unidentifiable.
Completely. It's just like it doesn't give me a fantasy feel.
No,
when
not at all.
when I look at it. Like it doesn't give me, like, for example, like House of the Dragon. Okay, like Ramin Djawadi, who is a freaking goat. If you're not familiar with his soundtracks, go back and watch Iron Man 1. That's where he got his start, was on that particular movie. His music has that fantasy, that big fantasy feel to it. And this just feels like more jokey than anything else. And I would expect moments of humor. Of course, you're going to have that. But with Dungeons and Dragons, it's a very action-oriented tabletop game. There's always something going on. The story's always advancing. Everybody's thinking about, their next step, what they're going to do when this happens, when that happens. This is kind of like, we're just rolling around the countryside or whatever, nothing to do, no place to go.
Yeah, it's like, let me pull out my loot in the middle of a battle. Like, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Mhm.
It's like, what should be happening is that Chris Pine should be chatting up, the Michelle Rodriguez character, and she's like, step off. But Renee Jean Page, maybe she's got the hots for him and he's not into her. Like, there should be all sorts of triangles and all sorts of creepy stuff going on where, one walks into the other and they're like, oh, you're sleeping together. Why, what does he have that I don't got? Like, it should be like this. If they're going to joke about anything, it should be about how much sex they are or are not having. That's what the joke should be. But the fantasy part is not there. It doesn't feel, like a fantasy. It doesn't feel like an adventure. If they if they got the wrong relic for the wrong person, which does happen, let one of them get killed doing it. And then now they've got to retrieve that thing back so nobody else gets killed. Do something like that. Make it more serious. If this is the wrong people, it certainly doesn't feel wrong. It feels kind of goofy and playful and, make this scary. Who does good, scary soundtracks? Oh, and the other thing too, you mentioned House of the Dragon. This costume design is not what it should be. It should be much more colorful, much more flavorful for what we're getting. I'm not knocking the costume designers in this. I just feel like it's not hitting the mark for what I've seen other Dungeons and Dragons peeps, create. These guys are incredibly creative. They could have gone and said, hey, who should we dress this guy as? What's the most common, costuming and stuff? Even the weapons. Does this even follow the D&D rules?
I'm not getting it. Granted, I'm a normie, but dang it, I'm going to enough conventions and I've seen enough cosplay to know that they're kind of phoning it in with with respect to, the costuming and all of that.
Well,
and
looks like they got everything from Party City. There, I said it.
Agreed. Absolutely 100% agreed. But folks, it really does go to the point of something like this. So this is from Hollywood in Toto, actually written January 29th of this year. The masculinity crisis and the death of the Hollywood hero. Audiences still crave alpha males, but movie studios have other ideas. How on point is that?
It's totally on point. I want to see James Bond going up to a woman, putting his hand on her, like the nape of her neck, and unzipping her dress at the same time. That's what I want to see. I want to see stuff like that. I want to see him, I think there was one movie where he had ordered champagne for the room and they're like, champagne for two. He's like, no, for one. Like he'd already finished and he was out of there, but he ordered champagne for her. I want to see cool kind of like playful things like that where, he's tying in his obvious hardcore masculinity with incredible sensuality. Like Daniel Craig's body is just crazy hot. So we got to see him kind of coming out of water a few times, but he's been hotter in other films. And, I feel like we could have seen him in a lot of things with I think it's Green is the girl's name who was in a few of his films. She's hot too. So between the two of them, we should have been like drooling, it should be that level. And if they're going to throw in another James Bond, they should be sleeping together. That should have just been, it's like, you told me you were going to show me everything. And he'd be like, yeah, I am showing you everything. And that should have been like, oh my God, this is so cool. We should be seeing provocative things because these men are intelligent too. So it's not an ordinary guy we're talking about. James Bond, which is the picture we're seeing, he's highly intelligent. So let's see that intelligence. I love to see him kind of masterfully play this whole thing. They thought I was done. How you like me now? That would have been so badass.
I so would have loved that because, I used to watch the Bond movies all the time. They were one of my favorite things, to watch. And James Bond was like this ultra alpha male and thought that was what we were going to get in the last, in the last one. I mean, I had my issues with Skyfall. Over and all, with pretty much what you got, what you saw was what you got. It was okay. But with the new one, with how they just basically gutted his character and masculinity, which is the main thing of what gets Bond through what he does, is gone, which saps away the whole interest, in the franchise, as a whole. But look here, it says a quick Google search of 2023's most anticipated movies brings up some interesting results. How many of these are movies we are trying to say? One, John Wick Chapter 4.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Woo!
Masculine AF, guys. This is just, oh my God. Creed 3, masculine. There is no emasculization in this. This is like, it's a throwdown, it's like it's a beat down. It's so masculine. And also, what's the other one? Mission Impossible. I don't think any Mission Impossibles have been emasculated. You can't be emasculated and be in Mission Impossible.
No. And also that's Tom Cruise's, well, he's got an interest in that company, which is Skydance. Every one of those MI movies have been on point. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we'll wait and we'll see what happens with that one, when that one comes out. But it's still, focused on a male character. We hope it stays that way. Extraction 2. If you have not seen the first Extraction movie on Netflix, you need to go back and watch that. You want to talk about a strong, unapologetically masculine character, but has this deep emotional scar, at the same time. But it is that emotional scar that makes him do what he does in Extraction. So I cannot wait for Extraction 2. The Equalizer 3. I don't think I've ever seen any of the Equalizer movies.
I haven't seen any of those, but the Equalizer is supposed to kind of like, things didn't go as planned. Don't worry, I'll give you justice. This will be like, even like Southern justice, if you will. And I'm not saying it with an accent, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's like, the person got away free. I'm like, nah, they're going to give him Southern justice.
Or it's just like, shame we heard about that.
And we kind of saw that a little bit in Reacher, that element of justice, where people get their just deserves. They thought they got away with it, but we know better.
Yeah, it's like we know exactly what happened. So what he's saying is, and what the author's saying is, what do all of these movies have in common? Everyone has a strong male lead character. And the odd thing is that the demand and desire for these movies come at the very same time as Hollywood is doing all in its power to demonize masculinity and kill off traditional Hollywood heroes. And he's saying, I'm not talking about the Marvel comic book heroes. I mean the classic James Bond types, real men, not men in tights who like to shoot lasers from their eyes. It's like, not for nothing, but that's the kind of traditional masculine characters in the movies that we're looking for. Like, case in point, Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
That film, I mean, it did really good because you kept hearing all it's military propaganda and it's got toxic male stereotypes, blah, blah, blah. People are like, shut up and take my money. People were saying, I'm going to see it like 2-3 times, bringing other people with them to see it. You've got fighter pilots who say, yeah, that's pretty much what it's like being in the cockpit, and having Tom Cruise thank the audience before the movie even started.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Tom Cruise really does such a brilliant job of promoting his movies in a way that is very unique. And he just believe so much in his work. He really has never let us down by his performances and his intensity. And he might be the ultimate alpha male. I don't know. But he certainly does give us movies. He does a very nice balance through his career of different types of men in the United States in particular. But certainly there's no shortage of that machismo role that he does so well, and with integrity.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh
Wow,
my gosh.
a psychiatrist describes a gradual process of psychological and emotional castration.
That
Wow.
is draining the masculine energy out of Hollywood. So that's very interesting. So there's this huge, well, I won't say huge, but this article here where they're basically, where Dr. Sarada, I guess this is their website, is talking about the emasculation of men in Hollywood. And we have seen this continuously with what's been portrayed, elevating female characters at the expense of male characters, making male characters seem as if they're incompetent, that they need to be saved all the time. Something that irritated me in Ant-Man and the Wasp is like, yeah, Janet Van Dyne is cool, but Hank Pym should be at the forefront. I could see if he's in some situation and Janet happens to help him out, but it seems like it was mostly just focused on her, and Hank Pym was like an afterthought, and that didn't sit well, with me.
Yeah, it was weird. And ironically, I thought that film would do better, but maybe it didn't resonate. It was not as appealing as, let's say, something like Avatar 2, which is essentially, many people have said, is the same story as Avatar 1, but maybe that was an appealing story with the male lead, Jake Sully, who
Mhm.
is the male lead. And Avatar 2 also had a lot of male characters that had male themes. They talked a lot about, you could see a lot of father-son relationship stuff. One of the most, remarkable ones I've seen in a long time. So that male presence is really essential in a lot of these films.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's interesting, this paragraph here. It says that before not that long ago, girls wanted to date or marry the men they saw on screen. I mean, who couldn't? When you see some hot dude, alpha male, gonna take care of everything, you know, strong enough to say nothing scares him, but what scares him is if somebody he loves or he cares about, is in trouble. I mean, that's kind of the thing. But now they're more likely to want to emulate them. And we've seen this shift in Hollywood where somehow femininity is demonized. And in order to, we'll say, power is seen as masculine. So therefore, women have to be masculine. They can't be feminine. They can't rest in their own feminine power. They have to be like men or they're not useful.
Yeah, I really think it's so weird that anybody would want to emulate a man. It's like men are men, and I'm very glad that they are, because
Hmm.
I don't have to do any of that stuff. So, and I don't want to do any of that stuff. I support them. Do what you have to do, men out there. We support you, and men and women are different.
Yes.
I could never emulate a man. It's laughable, even me thinking what they are thinking and what they have to deal with every day. I can't even think about that. That's nuts. I don't even want to know. I know it's tough.
Yeah, I
But
I don't I don't either. I remember my nana telling me something one day. She's like, women can do a lot of things. She's like, don't get me wrong, but there's some things that only a man can do. And she didn't say it, preachy. It was just very matter of fact to kind of tell me. It's just like there's definitely things that you can do. But there's also some things that you can't do because you're not a woman. It was just very, very just very matter of fact. And again, I so feel there's so much truth in this article. In Hollywood, where authentic masculinity is ridiculed and condemned, men have been reduced to emasculated caricatures, pale imitations of traditional masculinity. And here's Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
I I can't with this. I can't with this.
I'd rather see him in jeans and a wife beater. That's how I'd like to see Timothy Chalamet.
Totally. I'd much rather, see him in something like that than there is nothing masculine um about this. And it's a shame because anytime I think of actors on the red carpet, especially men on the red carpet, they have the sharpest suits, or even if something is casual, it is so freaking casual chic, and they look good and they look masculine. This just I can't with this.
Well, he doesn't look his best.
No. And that's a shame, right? Because it's just like he could look so much better, but
He could have just like gone without the top, and I'd be like, oh, okay.
or better yet, just had the jacket, no shirt, just had the
Yes.
matched jacket with
Yes.
with the pants, and it just would have
Absolutely. That would have been perfect, Reina.
absolutely would have worked, but it's just
It's
such a
mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling exactly how that's managed to happen. And let's see, so I found this in Refinery actually.
Mm-hmm.
Basically says Japanese man was Hollywood's first sex symbol, so stop emasculating our Asian leading men. So just in case people were not saying that it's just that it's just happening to white men, we've seen it happen more often than not with black men portrayed in movies and television. And so I'm not surprised of seeing the same thing happening with Asian men. Now, I watch an obscene amount of anime. I also watch an obscene amount of K-dramas. I'm actually watching one now. Compare that to Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. Now, you and I, we've watched a lot of martial arts movies, right?
Yes.
Yes. That is a very, very masculine profession. You will have some female martial artists, but again, they compete in a different way. But very masculine. So when I'm watching Shang-Chi and I'm just kind of like, did he really just get kicked in the nuts by his sister? I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm just like, and y'all think this is okay. I couldn't. I was just like, no, this does not work. And again, insulting to men.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing that we always expect to see in many martial arts films, of course, the fighting montage where they're training, but also they have to have their shirt off. Like this is a given. These men have to, at some point in the film, have their shirt off, and it's because of the sexual nature, the power of male sexuality that we're watching that, and watching them do punches or whatever it is they're doing, so we can see their muscles moving and whatever it is.
Yes, you have to see the training montage. We've seen it in martial arts movies. That is required. You have to have that training montage. We've seen it in movies like Rocky. We've seen it in Creed. We've even seen it in RRR.
Yes, yes, yes. And so, it's the nature of that particular discipline, in addition to meditation, in addition to having balance, having strict discipline with diet, there is a strong sense of sexuality associated with, because you are making yourself the best version of yourself and being healthy. And so you're going to attract people by what you've been able to accomplish, and more people will want to study and do martial arts with you. So there's a lot of elements to it, but I'm not surprised that a Japanese man was Hollywood's first sex symbol. I don't know what role he played, but yeah, it's very
Let's
interesting to see that.
see. Ooh, Daniel Day Kim. I remember him. Because weren't we talking about
Yeah, he was in that movie. What is it called with the woman? They tried to make 1/6 scale figures of it, and then they canceled it. It was called, I can't read it. I can't read it, but you know something, I have to be honest with you. Um, and I know a lot of people have said that one of the men in Shang-Chi was not attractive. And I'm like, he's a good looking guy. It's just, how are they presenting him sexually? Is he presented as somebody who, has game? This is something very interesting.
exactly? And they, and they didn't. Like even with Jackie Chan's comedic, martial arts, there was still that sexuality behind that. Bruce Lee, hell yeah, that's my gateway drug.
Yeah, yeah,
He was extremely, extremely good looking.
yeah.
Simu Liu was average. He was average. I get it because I kind of said the same thing. I'm like, okay, and apparently that's a lot of like Asian criticism were just like this dude. Someone said this dude is straight up ugly when we're talking about Simu Liu, but they're missing the other part. And once again, acting as if testosterone is bad, that's wrong. Women shouldn't want to look at this guy when we do. It's so disingenuous on Hollywood's part.
It is, and we are waiting for the main character to kick ass. Like this is, we're waiting for that. We want to see him throw punches. This isn't something that we're going to be, coy about. I want to see him throw punches. I want to see him take some punches. I want to see him, get up after getting the crap beat out of him and use every ounce of energy he has to defeat the final, give that final blow with or without the rings, with or without the rings.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this article from the National Review, we'll close with this one because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. The toxic masculinity smear, and that's pretty much exactly what it is. Granted, this is written by Ben Shapiro. Emasculation is not a solution to social ills. There is a lot of truth
Yeah,
in that
it
statement.
isn't. And it is kind of odd, the focus on it, honestly, in trying to erase it is odd. And what I kind of fear is someone what we're really seeing is these remakes where they will remove the masculine parts and remake something so that they've corrected, it's been corrected. It's been, because it should have never had those things in it. I'm thinking to myself, no, it really needs to have those things in it. That's why we watched it. We don't want to see a version of that. Oh, I don't want to see a version of a movie that's supposed to be masculine, but now has had it removed. Now it's not the same film. I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. That version that they're making is more like what you might make for a child,
Hmm.
not for adult content. We want adult content, and this type of thing is needed. I mean, could you imagine all those Vietnam movies they made, and they thought, yeah, let's remove, it's too masculine. Like, it sounds ridiculous.
It
Let's
sounds,
emasculate the soldiers.
I know, and just like make them not want to fight, not want to protect. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and they wonder why people don't want to see these films, or they'll call you everything, every name in the book, because you don't want to watch it. But it's like we don't want to see emasculated men in movies and TV. It used to be that if you were not a strong man, you got ridiculed for that in the film. Like how many times have we seen the storyline where, the weakest guy or whatever, and they're giving him crap because they're like, you're not strong enough, blah blah blah, you're not even a man, and they start training and doing all this stuff to prove that yes, indeed, that they are. But Hollywood looks at masculinity as a problem. So they just want to neuter all their male characters, make their male characters basically into women, and think that that solves whatever social problem that they believe that there is with respect to men. Testosterone is not the problem here, people.
No, it isn't. And, this is certainly a huge problem for American films. I think
Yes.
that foreign films know that they must have that male presence because it's what we're seeing, and why, as you mentioned before, Indian films are so popular. It's got a nice balance in a lot of them, but
Hmm.
to be honest with you, it's got to have that male presence in it, or else it doesn't make any sense. It's not, you can't relate to it. So when there are scenes where people have to fight, it has to have that masculine feel to it, or else what's going on in this film.
I know. It's like, why, what's going on, and why the heck, should I keep watching? And to kind of go back actually to the Dungeons and Dragons thing, I'm gonna use a anime reference for
Oh,
this.
okay.
So for my anime fans who've ever watched Rising of the Shield Hero, which basically this like gamer finds himself basically sucked into a world reminiscent of the tabletop games that he plays, and he is basically the shield hero. With his particular role, he cannot take up a sword against anyone. He mainly just has the protective role with his shield that eventually starts to get certain power ups and everything. He is actually in a band, or his group. The rest of them are women. One is basically his sword. She's pledged to defend him. Anyone who takes a sword up against him, she defends him. There's this other one who she's so cute. She's so little. And then when she gets all happy and everything, she poofs into like this battle bird. It's like a cross between like an owl and a ninja or something like that. And there's another character that's there, and they're all women. They're all very feminine. They even, his sword is even, she's attracted to him, and they play onto that, but they do not emasculate who he is throughout that anime. He's,
Yeah.
he is protective. If anything, it's when he finds out that he can only use the shield, that he can't use a sword, and especially when he has this group of people that he's responsible for, it does make him feel bad. That's something he wrestles with. It's like,
Hmm.
I'm not able to do that. But he finds every single way that he can to protect the women that are in his clan. One gets kidnapped. He's like, okay, this is what we're going to do to go and get them back. So with that, it's interesting how there's so many more female characters, but there's such a strong male presence in there that you don't feel like the balance, is upset. You have one that looks at him like an older brother, another one who's just like, I wish he'd look at me as more than X, Y, and Z. It's that balance that we're missing. And the more that Hollywood tampers with that balance, the more people are just going to walk away and not be interested in what they have to offer. I mean, we went over the films that people are anticipating for 2023. Huge, strong male leads. Creed 3 doing absolutely crazy, crazy numbers. And that's one of the most masculine topics ever. Boxing.
Yes.
Hitman in John Wick. John Wick 4. My goodness, there's just so much that's there. And I can't predict if Hollywood is going to shift or not, but there's plenty of gems out there of people shifting, and also with the things that people watch. Again, like we were talking about, it's like on Netflix, I can't think of the number of American things that I've watched over the past week, but I can tell you I have watched a lot of foreign television
Mhm.
where they're not about this, emasculating men thing.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Lorena, my favorite show on TV is SEAL Team, and of course, it follows military men in the American military. But
Hmm.
outside of that, yeah, a lot of what I watch is kind of like that. I want to see that sort of stuff because they are so masculine and so alpha male as well. And they have a lot of the things of protecting America. This is and pride in the country. I mean, there's a lot of that in it. So I enjoy stuff like that. I think that we need to see more like that. But these movies don't seem to be giving us that. You and I watched Reacher last year, and of course that
Hmm.
was incredibly masculine.
Oh God, yeah.
But and also the Terminal List. So those types of films, I think, and stories, let's say, miniseries, certainly are a step in the right direction. Let's
Hmm.
just hope that it keeps going in that direction without worrying about these comments about how masculine a guy is. It's like that's what men are. They're masculine.
Exactly. It's what makes them men. And it's just, Hollywood is not doing society any favors by basically demonizing men. And you're starting to see this with how the public spends their entertainment dollars, how they spend, their time streaming, or another thing, even with stuff that they read. Manga is literally destroying American comics. Why? Well, we'll say American mainstream comics because there's plenty of like indie American comics that are actually doing good, but because they're not trying to, demonize men, they're sticking to how there's male power, there's female power, and one is not better than the other, but the two are balanced.
Yeah, it is balanced, and this is maybe a good time for those independent comic creators to put their comics out because the mainstream comic groups are doing so poorly, and people want to see more comics. So they'll go to the old omnibus editions, but now they can go to new comics and see what's out there. The market has changed so much in regards to that. But anime, I'm not surprised it's doing well. They certainly do take chances when it comes to entertainment, and they just don't leave you bored or it's not predictable, so you're always watching something that's different and exciting.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, time flies on this show, just hanging out with you guys, talking with you guys. And we just had to do a show about this because, yet again, you have another film who they haven't quite figured out yet that you don't demonize men in order to get people to watch your product or make them the butt of the joke. Yeah, there's movies where it happens, but it's done in good fun and in jest and not trying to push an agenda, so to speak. So any last thoughts, my dear, before we wrap up?
Yeah, there's these leading men in Hollywood. I want to see them just kind of bear more of their masculinity, not just in combat or something like that. I want to see them up it a bit more in the sexuality factor. So I'm also looking for that. I think that we need to see that, and men, being attracted to whomever they're attracted to. We need to see those interactions between people so that it feels more natural. And I think we got that in Avatar too. If there's anything that I found really interesting about the film is the interactions between people that were
Hmm.
realistic. We saw teenagers who were like, oh, who's that new kid over there, being excited about being attracted to another teenager. I think it's natural to see stuff like this. So I think we need to see more of that, more of the way that attraction works,
Hmm.
and in a realistic manner as well. So, if he's if he's in a band, if Chris Pine is the only guy there, he's got to be sleeping with one of those girls. So this is come on. Come on.
Let's be
This is,
realistic
come
here.
on. Let's just be honest. He's too attractive, too charismatic, playing that lute. He reminds me of the lute player in Hogwarts Legacy, the one at the staircase that I can't take my eyes off of. So yes, I think that I think that somebody like Chris Pine, as attractive and charming as he is, wouldn't have a problem at all charming those women. Yeah, and while stealing the money from them at the same time.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I love you. And then I'm stealing your money at the same
He took my
at
money.
the same
I
time.
wonder if he's
freaking
coming
love
back.
Well, folks, thank you so much for being here with us. Please do, of course, subscribe to Positive Fandom. Please do subscribe to myself, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.